back to the lyric about euthanizing feelings, I think that is such a central focus in the record. So having recognized that, I've found moments across the record where there is a recognition of feeling something and a celebration of that.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be good to kind of bring those two aspects together.
Sure. Yeah.
The awareness of the tendency that one has to euthanize our feelings. And then in Waste, on this day I feel I'm wasting my time. Obviously, if it were just on this day I'm wasting my time, that would seem like a purely bad thing.
Yeah.
For me, the I feel and the delivery of I feel is a kind of saving grace. Because there's not a euthanization of feeling.
Yeah, it's kind of, and I think a lot of people have this too, that, you know, any sort of thing that, I think society's kind of built on this, like, if you're not constantly making something or producing something, you're wasting time, or there's even just like something I saw the other day that it was like, I just made toast and was hanging out, and my brain's telling me I should feel guilty for it. Like, that's exactly it. It's just like a subconscious thing that, like, you know, if I didn't do something productive that day, then in the back of my head, my brain will be like, you're wasting time, you only have so much, you know, you should be
doing something.
You should be doing. And so just trying to kind of deconstruct that and in a healthy way, I think has been one of the bigger challenges. And so that's kind of where that lyric comes. Because also a lot of the time too, I feel like if I was doing nothing but making music, that it would probably all sound a bit bland, because you have to, like, in my opinion, allow downtime. That's where, you know, you end up soaking up a lot of information and ideas. And then so that way, when you go to actually make something, it feels more special and more potent than kind of just going all the time, you know?
Yeah. So if one tendency that we're aware of in this record is euthanizing the feelings, another one is this drive to have a sense of achieving something, of not being wasteful.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that I really love about the record is the subtlety with which it kind of recognizes different things about how that tendency plays out. Like, and in Keep Off the Lawn, I don't try and I don't get dressed. So here we have a moment where, you know, we're catching ourselves in the act of not being swept up.
Yeah.
And it's perhaps just before this sense, well, I'm being wasteful, comes in. But the judgment isn't there.
It's kind of, there's always that constant battle of, sometimes I just feel like, just want to, like, lay face down on my pillow all day. and then there's the criticism, like, oh no, you can't be a piece of shit today, you need to get up and, you know, do all of this, do all that. And kind of trying to find a healthy relationship between the two, I guess, is a constant theme and a constant struggle throughout the record.
I feel like existentially some shifting, some transformation happens especially in the final track, Terra Incognita, where there is a sense, there's a reference to the unknown little places new to you and me. Of course, that's what Terra Incognita is. And there is first lyrically and then sonically a moving away from the Aqua Dungeon.
Yes.
So it's in the lyrics, and then there's a kind of fake end to the song, and then we have audio of walking across the room, opening the door, and then instrumentally we go on this significant journey, I think. So to what extent does what happens there, the transformation, which clearly is celebrated and it's felt as healthy, to what extent is that related to the not trying? I don't try and I don't get dressed. Obviously, one version of the story is we get beyond not trying, we try really hard, we make a record, transformation happens because we got up and we made it work. That's one story. And then a different story is that the not getting caught up in the need to always be trying, always be doing, leads to something magical happening.
Well, I mean, more so on the kind of like the first path you were talking about, where it starts off, the song title, Keep Off the Lawn, is kind of like a play on those like yard signs that, keep off the lawn, blah, 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 but it's also more of like a stay inside type of thing, where at the end of the record, I'm finally like leaving the house, and so it definitely takes like, there's definitely like a journey throughout the record that kind of ends in a good place where, if you take it from the lens of not wanting to go out and staying inside, and then the conclusion is then, end up making it out. That's kind of like a simplified version, I guess, of the trajectory of the record as a whole. And I think a lot of it too is trying to be okay with certain aspects of yourself or aspects of what you're doing, in that I think the saying like you're your own worst critic, I definitely feel that. I have like a lot, especially when it comes to music, I have a lot of like perfectionist tendencies, and especially since this is the kind of my first solo release as YYY, it's, everything's on me. Like when you're part of like a group, then everyone kind of reaps the rewards, but also gets hit with the flack, and it's a bit easier to bear that brunt. But as a solo artist, then it's the stakes are a little bit higher, so to speak. But I think in a lot of senses, like, I obviously wanted the record to succeed, and I kind of felt subconsciously if I had the end song be kind of a good end to the story, that would, be the good end to the record as a whole.
Absolutely. There's two features of Terra Incognita that I think they would be good to zoom in on. One is that the Aqua Dungeon is leaking. If the Aqua Dungeon's leaking new sensations, then this kind of transformation, this positive ending can happen. And the other is that, of course, we're moving into the sunlight. The record is called Aqua Dungeon After Dark, and in the middle of the record, or on track 7, I Feel Ya, the sunshine feels like a big guilt trip to go out when you don't want to go out. So, so when it makes its first appearance, it's kind of a threat to the comfortable creation space of the Aqua Dungeon. So what's happening then at the end, when there isn't the sense in the 10th track that the sunlight is a threat anymore to the Aqua Dungeon, and the Aqua Dungeon is leaking. So what's going on there in terms of transformation? And
shortly after I got the record done, I ended up moving to a new house, and it kind of felt like the you know, that record has such an identity in that spot, and I don't think I really even started anything new until I moved to the next place I was at. So kind of like a, you know, this is here, this is done, and this is kind of me wrapping up, you know, maybe like loose ends on the place, and kind of just letting that exist and not trying to take any more from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, taking down the set.
Yes.
So it doesn't feel like escaping from a prison.
Right.
It feels like, okay, here's this beautiful kind of laboratory or whatever, the space of the alchemist, and it's been beautiful what's been created here, and this is just one record. We honored this space, Aqua Dungeon After Dark, and then I just think it's...
Then on to the next.
Yeah, exactly. Because the sunshine has had that cameo as initially a threat to this creative space. I think there's a wonderful complexity there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in one sense, the record kind of takes place over the course of a night, and so you know, feeling like the sunshine is a threat, and I think more so it's a threat to creativity, which is one of the reasons that I'm working or writing at night.
The first time that there is explicit focus on the world outside the Aqua Dungeon, as far as I can see, is in Cool World. On the outside, everything feels like a violent dream, but it's not. And I think that that's a really significant hinge in the record too. The fact that we get that thought out. This is how it seems, like a violent dream. It seems unreal. It seems purely threatening, violent dream. And then it's significant that that's stated, and then it's significant, especially with the production on But It's Not as well.
Yeah.
That then there's this other voice.
Yeah. So with Cool World, a lot of that is kind of, I think the song overall, or as a whole, is kind of a very sarcastic song where it's, you know, I feel like every day you watch the news and it's something like very depressing or very just like, ugh, you know, happening. And so Cool World is kind of like cool, you know?
Right.
So with something like, I feel like it's a violent dream, but it's not. It's not on that part is more so to do with it being a dream, knowing that, you know, it seems like a violent dream, but it's not a dream, it's just violent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So rather than it's not pertaining to both violent and dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I sense that in the song, definitely. There is like a dreamlike component to the song as well, and that enables the kind of the sarcasm.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool world, we're in this kind of bubble, it's all great.
Yeah.
And then the song itself, sonically and lyrically, is saying, but it's real, it's not a dream. And we have to engage with this reality.
Right.
Could you expand a bit more on that feature?
Yeah, I think like sonically, like production-wise, I wanted to have something that it kind of feels like you're, like, you know, when you're a young kid and you go on like the biggest roller coaster, and like during the middle of it, you kind of have that feeling like, I shouldn't have done this. This is like way too much. And it's like, it's, you know, you're going, and I kind of wanted to have that feeling of, you know, there's certain people on the ride that are having the time of their lives, and it's going like really fast, and it's like really in your face, and you're like teetering on the edge of like, oh God, this is like, this is not good, this is bad. And so I wanted to like kind of invoke that feeling of kind of have this like really bouncy, kind of like hyper-ish sound to it, and have like a really upbeat instrumental with like a darker undertone as far as the lyrics go. I think that juxtaposition is really powerful to me.
Yes.
So,
absolutely. Going back to the theme actually of change and fluctuation, like the fantasy will not survive. Another moment where this kind of comes through is, and the swords don't bend. And I like that the lyric is, the swords don't bend at all, and then that's followed by take your time. So could you expand a little bit more on this image of the swords that don't bend? I think that does relate to fantasy and reality. But then why at all? And then why does the fact that the sword's not bending at all prompt the thought, take your time?
I think the sword's not bending is kind of a, it's like a metaphor for, or sword's not bending at all, is kind of, you know, life doesn't really hold any punches back, and not at all. And so there's, you know, there's certain things I was going through at the time that just kind of felt like just one thing after another, and feeling like very defeated. And then the other part of me is just kind of like, you know, hang on, just take your time, and, you know, it'll, things, you know, trying to tell myself things will get better, essentially. So that's kind of that in a nutshell, more or less.
Yeah, similar to in I Feel Ya, quite a mountain to climb, quite a contract to sign. When you're indifferent, so you drink defeat. Is that the lyric?
Yeah.
So the sense of the drinking defeat,
just kind of letting that mentality kind of permeate and take hold.
Yeah, and then the take your time kind of counters that.
Right. Right.
This too shall pass kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So another feature in this and the swords don't bend is the focus on when the passion won't stay in one direction. And because we've been talking about feeling, I was talking before about by contrast with euthanizing feelings, we had On This Day I Feel I'm Wasting My Time, and then more significantly in I Feel Ya, I Feel You, I Feel You. So there's a kind of shared feeling.
Right.
Not only is a human feeling something, it's a feeling not being euthanized, but another human, you, are empathizing.
Yeah.
So there's a shared feeling. So feeling can save us, but the passion won't stay in one direction.
Yeah, so that, I think with that line, it's very much, like I'm a type of person that I get these like weird micro obsessions, I call them, where like a lot of times they're just like random hobbies that I'll jump into like really intensely and really hard for like 2 weeks and then never touch it again. And so like during COVID, I went through like a million of these little things, and I always feel like there's things I'm like constantly bouncing back and forth between, where I'm like, you know, maybe I'll stop making music for a couple weeks and just make like Instagram filters, or like, you know, jump into something that like I don't really know whatsoever, and then just become like fascinated with it. And then after a while it'll just be like, oh, I'm kind of bored with that, or like I'll get inspired over here and you know, jump on over to something else. So kind of
take that step down.
Yes. So it's kind of like, you know, I feel like I end up becoming like medium at everything and not good at like one specific thing, you know?
So that's the concern, when the passion won't stay in one direction.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously a contrast with that is creating and releasing Aquadungeon After That.
Right.
where you stay in one realm, and then you know, it comes to fruition, and then there's this sense of the fruition even incorporating you know, the beyond After Dark, the after Dark. So sticking with that component, let's just, over the course of the whole record, think a little bit more about these kind of sonic motifs. You said at the beginning of the interview about the keys, the key part.
Yeah, so there's a piano sample that I use in the first track that appears also at the very end of Terra Incognita, and that kind of fades out at the end with some like outdoor cricket noises, and if you listen to the end of the last track, it fades right into the beginning of the first track with the same piano motif, and I feel like that kind of wraps the whole thing together.
Yeah.
There was a couple of B-sides that didn't make the record that also had the motif in it. I was planning on trying to do it a bit more, but ended up not making the cut. But I think the having it at the beginning, at the end, I think was important for me.
Yeah. But when that motif shows up, and then in other instrumental sections, particularly the final minute of Keep Off the Lawn, I feel that there is this expression happening musically that is very different from the moments where the lyrics are kind of caught up in our in the concern about doing, wastefulness, like that worst critic, inner critic voice, I think is entirely absent at certain moments, particularly. Do you know what I mean by the final?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of me like sonically trying to prove something to the critic in my head almost.
It's beyond words.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that like A lot of things I can hear that I don't necessarily have words for that don't really also need words for.
Yes.
That end up being kind of this amalgamation of different emotions kind of packed into like some weird hybrid emotion.
Yeah.
That's
the alchemy, I think, that's happening there. We're not euthanizing the feelings. These different emotions are becoming integrated. There's a break from the lyrics, and existentially, I think that's really significant.
Yeah.
Could you comment a little bit more just on the absence of the inner critic voice combined with what you're doing musically at the very end?
The structure of the song was kind of, in a way, kind of like an homage to the ending songs that that LP does, where you have these songs that are 2/3 is the song, and then there's like an epilogue that happens after, like an instrumental epilogue, and I always really, really love that. So that's kind of my like love letter to those songs. And I really wanted to have like this instrumental piece at the end, and it ended up being a very uplifting segment of the record, and like kind of coming back to wanting to leave it on a good note. That's kind of where that comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. So one final thing. There is so right in the center of the record, at the beginning of Belated, so track 6, the very beginning of track 6, right at the center, we have what could be seen as a kind of synopsis of the whole story of the record. And so I'm just going to read that story, which is like the opening lyrics to that song, and then perhaps integrating what we've been recognizing about the positive note on which the record ends and these instrumental components that combat the inner critic. I'm just interested in whether you have anything to add to the synopsis, which I'm about to read. So the synopsis in Belated is, in the Aqua Dungeon after dark to Minneapolis, I went back and forth to prove that I exist. Forgot myself for a minute. I built shade and tried to make sense of the times. So, yeah. So I think that does work as a synopsis of the record.
Yeah.
Is that the full story?
Well, actually, so this song in particular, this song is actually it's almost like a letter I'm writing to one of my friends that had passed away years ago, trying to, kind of tell them like what I've been up to since then.
We're going back and forth to prove that we exist in the Aqua Dungeon after that.
Yeah, so that's more of a, trying to make a name for myself type of thing in a music world that's extremely populated and saturated. That's kind of more along the lines of what I was going for with that one.
So the oscillation, the going back and forth that we experience in the record itself is a more kind of introspective, going back and forth, because we've been talking about going back and forth between the red and blue,
right,
and back and forth between the voice that says "Don't be wasteful, try," which does have a role to play in creating the full record. With passion stays in one direction enough to create the whole record. But that's not the full component. There's also this being at peace with not trying, not forcing, allowing something to emerge in this space. So there's a subtle inner way in which we're going back and forth, maybe not to prove that we exist, but to experience existence more broadly, more inclusively.
Or maybe even just to prove to myself that I exist.
Right. And that the feelings are not being euthanized, that the feelings
Absolutely,
are It worked. You exist.
Did it.
And you've been transformed.
And I've been transformed.